Since Play-Doh burst on the scenes in the 1950s as an immensely popular child's toy, if you can call it that, more than 3 billion cans of the stuff has been sold to date. Think about that. 3 billion cans of Play-Doh sold worldwide. This is a popular children's toy around the world. Most of us can remember playing either just making up stuff with Play-Doh, or we had the Play-Doh sets where you had the stuff coming through the guy's head and you had to cut it off like a barber shop, or maybe you even had the homemade Play-Doh made by mom or dad. That stuff not quite the same, but still did the trick. This is bringing back tons of memories of tons of fun as a child, but there's way more to the story here. Play-Doh actually had a 20-year career, if you want to call it that, as a completely different product for a completely different use before the pivot to becoming what we know of it today as a child's toy. And the story is an incredible one. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. Okay, welcome to the very first episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we're actually diving into a happy accident story. If you joined me for the initial podcast episode, it was more of a tee up explaining why this podcast, where did it come from, what to expect, and here you are. Now you can expect some great stories. So this story first came out in the newsletter of late January, early February 2023, the Happy Accidents newsletter. And here I am in March of 2024, over a year later, sharing the story again as the first story in the Happy Accidents podcast. So dig in, sit back. Either you're watching or listening, you're going to love this story of accidental success. So, as I mentioned off the top, this product was actually around for 20 years and used in a completely different manner under a completely different name before it accidentally found a brand new identity that we know of it as today under Play-Doh. So here's how this incredible adventure unfolds. Back in 1933, there was a man by the name of Cleo McVicker, and him along with his brother Noah, the McVicker brothers, they decided to take a real leap of faith when they sold the idea, just the idea, of a wallpaper cleaner product to a retail store chain. So they already had this company. They had a company called Kutal Products where they sold stuff like this to retail store chains. And what they found was there was a need in the market for a wallpaper cleaner. Wallpaper was starting to become a more popular product, and people needed a good, efficient, effective way of cleaning the wallpaper. So the McVicker brothers said to this retail store, man, that's a hard one to say, retail store chain, hey, we've got a product. We will produce this wallpaper cleaner. You can sell it in your stores. And it just seemed like a natural fit. The problem being that they had never designed such a product like this before. So now that they'd sold the idea, they actually had to execute on it. It's kind of like the dog chasing a car. What does it do when it actually catches the car, right? Now they actually had to create this wallpaper cleaner product. So they got to work and eventually they did it. They actually developed a solution, you know it, made from flour, water, salt, and boric acid. This was what we know as Play-Doh today. They created this as a wallpaper cleaner, and the product was a hit. And it served Kutal products very well for at least 15 years. This was a popular product flying off the shelves in these retail stores. But eventually, they ran into some issues. Cleo, one of the brothers, he eventually died in 1949. And then it was his son Joseph that took over the company and found that the sales for this wallpaper cleaner was eventually starting to dry up. By 1953, the company was seriously struggling. Kutal Products was in trouble. So, by complete fluke, accident, or maybe it's just fortunate luck, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to see a lot of that in these stories throughout the podcast, Joseph's sister in law. So now this is the son of one of the original founders. So Joseph the son, his sister-in-law, a lady by the name of Kay Zufall, had an idea. So Kay, Mrs. Zufall, she was a nursery school teacher, and she decided she was going to take this product and use it with her students and just have it be a way for them to use their imagination, create different objects, and just have some fun with it. Well, as you can probably imagine, the kids loved it. Just you know what it felt like to grab this gooey stuff, different colors, and just be able to make different shapes, put things together. It's like your imagination is exploding, and you don't have to be a great artist to be able to mold some things together with this cool little product called Play-Doh. Well, once Joseph McVicker saw how popular it was with the children, and of course with some convincing from his sister-in-law, he decided he was going to reposition the product. So in 1956, Rainbow Crafts Company Inc. was established, and the product was now rebranded as what we know today as Play-Doh. And the rest, as they say, is history. So here's some fun facts about Play-Doh that you may or may not know. In 1960, accessories were added to the Play-Doh line. We've all probably used the different accessories, including the now famous Fun Factory. So that came along in 1960. In 1964, Rainbow Crafts was shipping more than 1 million cans of Play-Doh per year. So now we're talking within 7, 8 short years, 1 million cans of this stuff was going out per year. Talk about a successful pivot. Talk about a happy accident. If it wasn't for his sister-in-law taking it into the classroom and then, getting the idea that, boy, this stuff could actually pivot into a completely different product, 1 million cans a year within 7 or 8 years. By 1972, Play-Doh was acquired by General Mills under the Kenner brand. Then in 1991, Play-Doh was then acquired by Hasbro, who continues to own it today. And to date, more than 3 billion cans of Play-Doh have been sold since its transition from a wallpaper cleaner to a children's toy in 1956. All of this due to a happy accident. So, what are the lessons here? What are some things that we can learn from the Play-Doh story? Well, there's several, but there's three that I really want to highlight for you here. If you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you can just think of this in terms of your own life or your career, here's three different takeaways that you can learn from the Play-Doh story. One, don't be so attached to your product or idea that you're too stubborn to pivot. Imagine if he never let his sister-in-law take the stuff into the classroom, number one. Or imagine if he didn't pay attention to the signals that, boy, the kids are loving this, and I really have something on my hands here that can repivot. Don't be so stubborn. Pay attention to the market, be open to new ideas. The idea that you first came up with could actually be suited for something even better down the road. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, just about anything can be rebranded or reinvented, right? Even wallpaper cleaner. So something as mundane as that, if you keep your mind open, where else could this be used, and what can it tell you? And number three, like we kind of mentioned in the first one, look to new customer segments or audiences to see how they use your products differently. This is really talking about observation at this point. Because many of us, when we create something, we have an idea of mind of how this is going to be used. That doesn't mean that's how people are actually going to use it. It might function completely differently for them. They might find a different use for it. This is an extreme case. Wallpaper cleaner gets used as a children's toy, but even some of the smallest changes, smallest things that you're noticing. How is somebody using my software differently? How is somebody using that instrument I created differently or that tool differently? Now, can I reposition it? Can I rebrand it? Can I remarket it based on how people are actually utilizing it in their life? So, just three quick takeaway lessons there from the incredible story of Play-Doh. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I have enjoyed researching it and telling it. And yeah, thanks so much. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends.